Hi everyone, it's Lee. Hope you're well, and thank you for sending in all of those questions, brilliant questions, which hopefully we'll be able to answer in this video. My favourite thing about pantomime has to be how universal it is. So it appeals to everybody, the whole age spectrum, from toddlers up to grandparents, great-grandparents, and I think that's really important. I think a lot is bandied about these days about how pantomime is the first experience that a child has of theatre, and that is so true, absolutely true. And if you get it right, you've got theatre fans for life, which is very important. But what I think is more important than that is that it's a time of the year when the whole family can come together and do something as a group. There's not a lot of stuff that you can do that involves the whole age spectrum, and I think that's what's really important about pantomime. I think a lot of families don't even sit together and watch the television together anymore, so the fact that there's a live show that you can go to that appeals to everyone, I think that's really important. And the fact that pantomime has evolved over the years to become something that is accessible for everyone, I think that's really important. So that is my favourite thing about pantomime. So if I could only ever do one pantomime, it would be Cinderella. No shadow of a doubt, that is it. Cinderella is my favourite pantomime. It's got everything. It's got all the right characters, it's got comedy, it's got magic, it's got the best opportunities for good musical numbers, and you've also got the pathos in there between Buttons and Cinderella. When Cinderella says she only loves him as a brother, you don't get that kind of emotion in some pantomimes. So I think Cinderella absolutely has it all. I've done a few productions of Cinderella, both as a performer and as a writer-director. I've played Ugly Sisters a couple of times, three times, and most recently Fairy Godmother, which was a nice different take on the show, which I really enjoyed. Also, after our pantomime finishes, and sometimes in the middle of our pantomime run, I do go around the country and see other pantomime productions, and I have to say that Cinderella is the one that I try and see. If there's a good production of Cinderella around, I'll head to wherever that is in the country to see it. Yeah, I just think it's the most magical. So my best tip for writing a good pantomime script is to get the balance right. The story has to be key. Everything has to follow the story. That has to be the most important thing. But you've also got to have a balance of everything else chucked into the mix. Pantomime is a bit like a cake. If you put too many eggs in, or if you put too much sugar in, it can create an end product that isn't exactly what you want. So it's having the musical numbers in the right places and the right type of musical numbers for the moment, making sure that comedy is dotted throughout and that there's not ever a time in the script where the audience aren't either laughing at something or having just recovered from laughing at something. Even in those moments of pathos where, like I said earlier, where Buttons gets told by Cinderella that she only loves him as a brother, you always find a way to lighten that mood. So yeah, the comedy has to be well placed, but I think that's the general thing, is the balance, making sure you've not got too much of one thing at any one time and making sure it's spread out across the story. That's probably the best tip. Other than that, making sure that each character gets good stage time as well. So although you might have characters in a show that sort of lead it, my scripts tend to be comic and dame based, so they have a lot to do with the show and the comedy and everything else. So they're important characters, but it's important that everyone else gets good stage time as well, and also that you play people to their strengths. So I don't use a stock script for the scripts that I write for our productions. I write them from scratch depending on who is playing what. So if I've got a fairy who is a fantastic singer, then obviously that fairy is going to have some nice big songs to sing. If we've got a comic that's great at sort of falling about and falling over and doing the slapstick, then there you go, there's opportunities for that. So it's definitely getting the balance right, and then making sure you're writing for who's going to be performing it. If you don't know who's going to be performing the script, then sure, write a generic thing, but make sure you change it when you do know, so that the end product plays to everyone's strengths. Right, so as far as pranks go, I'm really lucky because I'm the writer and director of the shows that I'm in at the moment. I always know everything that's going on. So even in our muck-up matinees, I know what pranks, all the pranks have to be passed through me that are going to go, just to make sure they're safe, just to make sure they're not going too far or whatever. If you haven't seen one of our muck-up matinees or you don't know what it is, basically it's a show that we put on the end of the run. So the show is officially finished. We do one more show the day after or just on the end of the run, where the audience pay to come and watch the cast messing around. It's cheaper than the normal show. And it means it doesn't ruin one of the normal shows that people have paid full price for. They're physically coming to watch the cast playing pranks on each other. So it's always been really popular. There aren't many pranks that I don't know about, but the best one, because they do slip through the net, the best one that I've had was in Jack and the Beanstalk. It was the muck-up matinee. And there was a scene in the second half where the fairy comes on. We've just all arrived in Cloudland. The fairy comes on and gives Jack a sword to go and fight the giant and flesh creep. In this particular show, the fairy, I don't know if it was the fairy or the crew, I'm not sure, I can't remember who it was, but they decided that the fairy was, instead of giving Jack a sword, was going to give him a cucumber. Now, this was before we started doing our adult nights, so we couldn't go too far, but I think we've got the footage to show you what happened.
I'm afraid you're right, my power's weak. I'm an airy fairy, so to speak. Oh. But don't worry, Jack won't come a cropper. Here, take this.
That is a cucumber.
A magic chopper?
What's this?
In England, it's called a cucumber.
Yes.
In Wales, it's called a cucumber. In Spain, it's called une cucumber. And in Weymouth, it's called a great Saturday night.
My next slide, if I'm honest. What's he supposed to do with that?
You'll realise when the time is right.
So that was genuine. I was on the floor, absolutely, like physically and emotionally, I was gone. I couldn't keep it together. It was hilarious because I think what it was is not just that it was a cucumber, but that every line that continued afterwards just made sense, but in a totally different way. So yeah, I'd say that was the best prank. Well done. Whether it was Kira, who was the fairy, or the crew, whoever it was, brilliant. So, moving on from pranks, the next question was all about things going wrong. Now, most of the time, pantomime is a well-oiled machine, so what you see on the stage is what's in the script. Occasionally, things do go wrong. We don't have a huge amount of time to rehearse the show, sometimes 10 days, sometimes, if you're lucky, closer to 2 weeks, but generally between 10 days and 2 weeks. So, sometimes things do go wrong. And one of my favourite things to go wrong was in Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, I think the great thing about pantomime is that it's one of the only genres where you can react to something going wrong. So, if you go and see Phantom of the Opera, for example, if something was to go wrong in that show, they would brush past it and carry on, and you probably wouldn't know, or if you did know, it wouldn't matter because they've just carried on. With pantomime, sometimes the best thing to do if something goes wrong is to react to it, because it creates a unique experience for the audience. So in Jack and the Beanstalk we had this stretcher illusion. It was from the Twins FX, which is where we get all our special effects from. And it's basically this illusion box where the dame gets into it, climbs inside, and the arms come out at the sides, and they get stretched basically down to the bottom of the box. The head goes to the bottom of the box, the legs go up and all over the place, and at the end she escapes unscathed. Except this time I didn't quite escape unscathed. So the box came out as normal. We were doing it as part of a keep fit routine. Like within a song, the box came out. The doors opened, so they sort of hinged open that way. And I went to climb in the box, and I fell out the back of the box. So if you imagine these doors just open like this, and I stepped in and fell out the back. Actually quite hurt myself quite badly. So yeah, I had to react to it. Everybody was in tears of laughter. Gwyn was laughing. Chris, who was playing Jack, found it hilarious. But I had no option but to just get back up, and I really hurt my knee. I cut my knee because I grazed it for the friction of falling over. So I had to do the whole thing with this knee sort of not quite where it was bleeding, but like a graze. So yeah, I think that was my favourite thing that's ever gone wrong. Things do all the time. There are loads of stories that I could tell you, but that's for another video.